The gunshot echoed through the penthouse before Elena could scream. Viktor Volkov moved like death itself, silver hair gleaming under crystal chandeliers as he drove his fist into the intruder's throat. 3 men lay bleeding on Italian marble. 4 more were coming through the shattered balcony doors. And Elena Martinez, 21 years old and 6 weeks pregnant, stood frozen in her wedding dress from 2 months ago, realizing the monster who owned her might be the only thing keeping her alive. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's rewind to where this nightmare truly began. 8 weeks earlier, Elena had been wiping down tables at her father's izakaya in Shibuya when a man who moved like winter itself walked through the door. Viktor Volkov, 62 years old, Russian-Japanese crime lord who controlled half of Tokyo's underground empire. Everyone knew his name. Everyone feared it. He ordered the most expensive steak on the menu without looking at the price. And Elena, exhausted from a double shift and worried about the loan sharks who kept calling her father, did something monumentally stupid. She told him he was wrong. "The Dasai 50 doesn't pair well with fatty tuna," she said, setting down his order. "You want the Kokuryu Ryu, less floral, more umami, trust me." Her father had gone pale. The 2 men flanking Viktor had reached for their guns, but Viktor had simply looked at her, really looked at her, with eyes like frozen lakes, and said in perfect English, "Bring me what you recommend." She did. He drank it. He left a tip that could have covered her university tuition for a year, and Elena thought that was the end of it. 3 weeks later, men in black suits appeared at the restaurant. Her father owed 50 million yen to the wrong people. He had a week to pay or they'd take payment in blood, starting with Elena's 16-year-old twin brothers. Her mother cried. Her father apologized. Elena felt the world collapse. Then Viktor Volkov made an offer. He would pay the debt, all of it. Her family would be protected, untouchable, safe. The price was simple. Sir. Not as a mistress, not as a companion, as his wife, his bride, the mother of his heir. "You have 24 hours to decide," he told her in that restaurant's back room, his voice like gravel smoothed by time. "Agree, and your family lives in peace. Refuse, and I walk away. What happens to them after that is not my concern." Elena had looked at her father's desperate face, her mother's tears, the photo of her brothers on the wall, gap-toothed and grinning. She thought about the university acceptance letter hidden in her room, the life she'd planned, the freedom she'd never have. "I need conditions," she heard herself say. Victor's eyebrow raised. "Interesting. My family stays out of your world, completely. They don't know what you really do. They think this is a legitimate business arrangement." "Agreed. I finish my education. Online, if necessary, but I finish." "Agreed. And any child," her voice cracked, "any child I give you gets raised with love, not as a weapon for your empire." Viktor had studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was the saddest thing Elena had ever seen. "You have fire. That's why I chose you. Not your face, though it's beautiful. Not your youth, though I'm running out of time. You told me I was wrong about sake, and you were right. In my world, people spend every moment lying to me, flattering me, fearing me. You gave me honesty. That's rarer than diamonds." The wedding happened in 72 hours. Small, quiet, legally binding. Her family thought Viktor was a wealthy businessman who'd fallen for their daughter. They cried happy tears. Elena wore white and felt like she was attending her own funeral. Now here she was, standing in a penthouse that cost more than her entire neighborhood, still in that white dress because Viktor had insisted, waiting for the man who owned her to come claim what he'd bought. The door opened. Viktor entered, and Elena's breath caught despite everything. He wore a black suit that probably cost 6 figures. His silver hair was swept back. At 62, he moved with the confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no, and survived every time someone tried to say it anyway. Age had carved his face into something beyond handsome, dangerous, powerful, magnetic. "You're still dressed," he observed in English. He always spoke English to her. He knew she understood it better than Korean or Japanese. "I wasn't sure what you expected." "The truth, I expected you to try running." He crossed to the bar, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, offered her one. She didn't take it, But you're still here. Where would I go? You own my family's survival. Yes, I do. He took a slow sip. Let me be clear about what happens next, Elena. I'm 62 years old. My enemies smell weakness. They think I'm too old to hold my empire. They're wrong, but perception matters. I need an heir. A son, preferably. Someone to carry my name and my legacy. You're going to give me that child. Elena's hands clenched in the silk of her dress. So I'm breeding stock. You're my wife. There's a difference. Is there? Victor moved closer. Elena forced herself not to step back. He stopped inches away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and smoke and something darker. I could have taken you without the ceremony, without the money, without the pretense. Do you understand that? I could have made you disappear, used you until you gave me what I wanted, then discarded you. Instead, I married you. I made you legally protected. Whatever happens to me, you inherit everything. The legitimate businesses, at least. That's real power, Elena. I'm offering you more than captivity. You're offering me a gilded cage. Better than the alternative. His hand came up and Elena flinched, but he only touched her chin, tilting her face to meet his eyes. I won't lie to you. This isn't a love story, not yet, maybe not ever, but I will protect you. I will honor our agreement, and I will make sure that when our child is born, you have everything you need to raise them well. That's more than most marriages offer. Most marriages don't start with extortion. True, he released her chin. I'm going to give you a choice, one genuine choice in all of this. Stay tonight. Let me show you what our life could be. No consequences if you hate it. Tomorrow morning, if you want to leave, I'll arrange for your family's debt to disappear another way. I'll release you from this marriage. You walk away free. Elena stared at him. Why? Because I don't want a wife who flinches every time I touch her. I don't want a son born from pure fear. And because something in me, something I thought died decades ago, wants you to choose this. Choose me, even if it's just for pragmatic reasons. And if I stay past tomorrow? Then you stay completely. You become my true wife. You give me children. Plural if possible, you stand beside me. And in return, I give you everything I have. The city glittered beyond the windows. Tokyo at night, endless and indifferent. Elena thought about her brothers, her parents, the life she'd already lost. And she thought about Victor's eyes, cold, yes, but not cruel, tired, lonely, desperate in a way that naked power could never quite mask. One night, she whispered. One night, Victor agreed. He was surprisingly gentle. That was what shocked her most. Elena had expected brutality, possession, something violent and claiming. Instead, Victor touched her like she was made of glass and fire both. He undressed her slowly, reverently, his aged hands steady despite their years. When she trembled, he paused. When she gasped, he smiled against her skin. You've never done this before, he murmured. Not a question. No. Then we go slowly. I have waited 62 years to feel something real again. I can wait a few more hours. It hurt at first, then it didn't. Then it became something else entirely, something Elena had no words for. Victor was experienced in ways that made her head spin. He knew exactly where to touch, how to move, when to be demanding and when to be soft. By the time dawn crept through the windows, Elena lay boneless and stunned, her body humming with sensations she'd only read about. Victor traced patterns on her bare shoulder. Still want to leave. Elena should have said yes, should have run. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "What happens if I stay?" Then we build something, Victor said, his voice rough with exhaustion and something that might have been hope. Together, not as captor and captive, as partners who made a difficult bargain and chose to honor it. Elena turned to face him. In the morning light, he looked older, the lines around his eyes deeper. But there was vulnerability there too, something raw and unguarded. I want to finish my degree, international business through the University of Hong Kong, online program. Agreed. I want my family protected, always, no matter what happens between us. Already arranged. And I want, she paused, gathering courage, I want honesty. If you're going to keep me in this world, I need to understand it. Your empire, your enemies, everything. Victor's smile was sharp. Careful what you wish for. My world is uglier than you can imagine. I'm already in it. I'd rather see clearly. Then you'll see clearly. He pulled her closer. But first, you'll eat breakfast, then you'll rest. Tonight we begin your real education. And Elena, his hand moved to her flat stomach, possessive and warm, we begin working on your promise. The next 2 weeks blurred together. Victor enrolled her in the online business program, gave her a laptop, a credit card with no limit, and access to his penthouse library. During the day, while he managed his empire, Elena studied. At night, he taught her the other curriculum. I own 3 shipping companies, he explained over dinner one evening. Legitimate operations. They move electronics, textiles, machinery across the Pacific. They're profitable, legal, and they provide perfect cover for the other 10% of cargo. What's the other 10%? Information, weapons, currency, things that can't go through normal channels. He cut his steak precisely. I also control real estate holdings worth approximately $800 million, tech investments, a venture capital firm. The legitimate empire is larger than the criminal one now. That's the irony. I'm wealthier as a businessman than I ever was as a crime lord. Then why continue the criminal side? Because power isn't just money, it's leverage, fear, control. The legitimate businesses give me wealth. The illegitimate ones give me influence. He met her eyes. This is what our son will inherit, both sides. He'll need to be smart enough to manage both. Or daughter, Elena said quietly. Victor paused. Or daughter, though sons are traditional in my world. Your world needs to evolve. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe, or respect. Perhaps it does. Their physical relationship intensified. Victor was insatiable but never selfish. He learned her body like he was studying for an exam he refused to fail. 3 times a day, sometimes 4. Morning before breakfast. Afternoon when he returned from meetings. Night before sleep. Sometimes in his office, pressed against the windows overlooking Tokyo, the city bearing witness to their desperate attempt at creation. Elena's body changed. She felt it before any test could confirm, a tenderness in her breasts, a subtle nausea in the mornings, a bone-deep exhaustion that sleep couldn't touch. But she said nothing, waited, hoped and feared in equal measure. Then, exactly 16 days after their wedding night, she overheard the conversation that changed everything. Victor's office door was open just a crack. Elena had been walking past with her laptop when she heard the voices. 2 men, speaking Japanese, probably assuming she couldn't understand. But Elena's Japanese was better than anyone knew. Her mother was Japanese. She'd grown up bilingual. He's getting weak, the first man said. Married to some girl young enough to be his granddaughter. She's not even pregnant yet. What kind of leader? Careful, the second voice was cautious. Volkov has ears everywhere. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. He's 62. He can't hold territory forever. And if he dies without an heir, everything fractures. Maybe it's time to consider other leadership. Elena's blood turned to ice. She crept away silently, mind racing. These were Victor's own men, questioning him, measuring him for a coffin. That night, Victor found her sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. What's wrong? Your men are plotting against you. His expression didn't change. Which men? She told him everything. Names, exact words, implications. Victor listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You understand Japanese? My mother taught me. And you're telling me this instead of using it as leverage. Why would I use it as leverage? Victor moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Because information is currency. You could have held this, traded it for something you wanted. Freedom, maybe. If those men move against you, I lose everything too. My family's protection ends. The debt comes back. This isn't altruism, Victor, it's survival. He turned, and there was something fierce in his eyes, something that looked almost like pride. Come here. She did. He pulled her close, one hand tangling in her hair. Those men are already dead. They just don't know it yet. His voice was cold, final. But you just proved you're not my captive anymore. You're my ally. That changes things. How? It means I can trust you, and trust is rarer than love in my world. The next morning, the two men disappeared. Elena didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She'd seen the dark side of Victor's power, and it terrified her. But it also reassured her in a twisted way. This man would protect her, would protect their child. Whatever else he was thorough. 4 days later, Elena took the pregnancy test. Negative. She stared at the single line, feeling something break inside her chest. It wasn't relief. It was disappointment. And that realization was more terrifying than anything else. She was disappointed that she wasn't pregnant with her captor's child. What did that say about her? Victor found her sitting on the bathroom floor, test stick abandoned in the sink. "Not yet," she whispered. His jaw tightened. For a moment, she saw raw frustration flash across his face. Then he knelt beside her, joints creaking slightly with the movement. "The doctor said you're healthy, fertile. It takes time sometimes." "We don't have time. You're 62. Your men are watching, waiting for weakness." "Let them watch." He tilted her chin up. "We keep trying, that's all we can do." "How long before they move against you?" "As long as I stay strong, as long as I show no weakness." His thumb brushed her cheek. "But I'll be honest. A child would solidify my position, would prove I have a future worth protecting." "So I'm failing you." "No, we're failing together. There's a difference." He pulled her to her feet. "The doctor said you're entering your most fertile window. Starting tomorrow for the next 5 days. We focus on nothing else." "Victor." "Nothing else, Elena. I clear my schedule. You stop studying. We commit completely to this. Do you understand?" She understood. She understood that her worth was measured in her ability to conceive, that her purpose was singular and absolute. But she also understood something else. Victor was desperate. Actually desperate. And desperate men made mistakes. Or desperate men fought harder. The next 5 days were intense in ways that left Elena shaking. Victor approached it like a military campaign. Morning, afternoon, evening, night. He tracked her temperature, monitored her body, adjusted their timing with scientific precision. But there was nothing clinical about it. Every time felt raw, urgent, almost desperate. Like he was trying to will a child into existence through sheer force of need. On the 3rd day, collapsed against him and breathless, Elena whispered, "Why does this matter so much to you?" Victor's hand stilled on her spine. "Because I'm alone. Because I built an empire and have no one to leave it to. Because I'm 62 years old and I've never felt anything real until you told me I ordered the wrong sake." His voice cracked slightly. "Because I want something that's mine, truly mine, not bought or conquered or stolen, created with you." Elena felt something shift inside her chest, something dangerous and complicated. "Victor." "I know you don't love me. I know this started as coercion. But I need you to know." He pulled back to meet her eyes. "What I feel for you is as real as anything I'm capable of feeling. And if that's not love, it's the closest I'll ever get." Before Elena could respond, glass exploded inward. The balcony doors shattered in a spray of crystalline death. Victor moved before Elena could scream, shoving her down behind the bed as bullets tore through the room. 6 men in black tactical gear poured through the opening. Victor had a gun in his hand. When had he gotten a gun? And was returning fire with brutal efficiency. "Stay down," he roared. Elena pressed herself against the floor, heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs would crack. She heard Victor's gun bark 3 times in rapid succession. Heard bodies hit the ground. Then a grunt of pain, Victor's grunt, and her world narrowed to a single, terrifying point. He was hurt. She lifted her head just enough to see. Victor was grappling with a massive man in a ski mask, both of them locked in lethal combat. Victor's shoulder was bleeding. The intruder had a knife. They crashed into the dresser, and Victor's gun skittered across the floor. Directly toward Elena. She didn't think, didn't pause, just grabbed the weapon with shaking hands and aimed at the man trying to kill her husband. Her husband. When had she started thinking of him that way? "Get off him." The intruder turned, saw her, smiled beneath his mask like he'd found something amusing, started toward her instead, knife gleaming. Victor roared something in Russian and lunged, but he was bleeding, slower than usual. The man was younger, faster. He raised the knife. Elena pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly broke her wrist. The bullet went wide, hitting the man's shoulder instead of his chest, but it was enough. He stumbled. Victor was on him in a heartbeat, hands moving in ways that were economical and final. There was a wet crunch. The man stopped moving. Silence descended like a burial shroud. Victor stood among 6 bodies, breathing hard, blood streaming from his shoulder. His eyes found Elena. "Are you hurt?" "No, you are." "Flesh wound." He retrieved his gun from her trembling hands, checked the remaining bodies with professional thoroughness. All dead. Then he grabbed his phone, speaking rapid Japanese. "Clean up crew, now, and find out who sent them." He hung up, crossed to Elena, pulled her to her feet and into his arms with his good hand, heedless of the blood soaking into her nightgown. "You saved my life," he murmured against her hair. "I couldn't let him kill you." "Why not? I'm your captor, remember." Elena pulled back to look at him, really look at him. This man who'd bought her, married her, tried to impregnate her. This man who'd taught her about business and power and pleasure. This man who just killed 6 people to keep her safe. "Because I love you, you stupid old man." The words hung in the air like smoke. Victor stared at her, something breaking open in his expression. "Say that again." "I love you. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you gave me honesty instead of pretty lies. Maybe when you let me negotiate terms instead of just taking what you wanted. Maybe tonight when you put yourself between me and bullets. But I love you, and I'm furious that you got hurt, and I'm terrified that next time I won't be able to save you." Victor kissed her, hard, desperate, tasting of blood and violence and something that might have been joy. "I love you too. God help me, I love you too." The cleanup crew arrived within 20 minutes. Professional, silent, efficient. They removed the bodies, replaced the windows, erased all evidence of violence. A private doctor appeared to stitch Victor's shoulder. Through it all, Victor never let go of Elena's hand. "Who sent them?" she asked when they were finally alone again. "The Koizumi family, rivals from Osaka. They've been testing my borders for months." His jaw tightened. "Tomorrow I send a message, one they won't forget." "How?" "You don't want to know." "Yes, I do. You promised me honesty." Victor studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "The Koizumi patriarch has 3 sons. By tomorrow night, he'll have none. His businesses will burn. His territory will be absorbed into mine. And everyone in Tokyo will remember why it's a mistake to touch what belongs to Viktor Volkov." Elena should have been horrified, should have recoiled from the casual brutality. Instead, she felt something darker, something that whispered that this was the price of safety in his world. "Will that make us safer?" "For a while, until the next challenger appears. This is what you married, Elena. This is what our child will inherit. A world where power is maintained through fear and violence. Can you live with that?" She thought about her family, safe and ignorant, about the degree she was earning, about the way Victor touched her like she was precious, about the fact that she'd killed a man tonight, pulled the trigger without hesitation to protect him. "I can live with it," she said quietly, "as long as we're together." 3 weeks later, Elena stood in the penthouse bathroom at dawn, staring at a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines. Positive. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the test. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Viktor Volkov's child. The reality of it crashed over her like a wave. There was a life inside her now, a tiny collection of cells that would become a person, and that person would grow up in a world of violence and power and complicated love. Victor was still asleep. She should wake him, should tell him immediately. Instead, she sat on the edge of the bathtub and let herself feel everything. Terror, joy, confusion, hope. This baby wasn't planned not by her anyway. This baby was the product of coercion and negotiation and desperate need. But it was also hers, theirs, real. "Elena." She looked up. Victor stood in the doorway, hair mussed from sleep, eyes sharp despite the early hour. He always slept light, always aware. She held up the test wordlessly. Victor crossed the bathroom in 3 strides, took the test from her hands, stared at those 2 pink lines like they were written in a language he'd forgotten how to read. His throat worked. His eyes went suspiciously bright. "You're sure?" "I'll call the doctor for confirmation, but yes, I'm sure." Victor sat down beside her on the bathtub edge. For a long moment, they just sat there in silence, both staring at the tiny plastic stick that had just changed everything. "I'm going to be a father," he whispered. "And I'm going to be a mother at 21 to a baby whose father is 62. Elena laughed, a little hysterical. "This is insane." "Completely insane." Victor set the test down carefully, reverently. Then he took her face in both hands. "I will protect you both with everything I have, everything I am. You understand that?" "I know." "No, you don't, not fully." His thumbs brushed her cheeks. "I have enemies who would use this child against me, who would hurt you to hurt me. Starting today, your security triples. You don't leave this building without guards. You don't eat anything that hasn't been tested. You don't talk to anyone I haven't vetted." "Victor, that's non-negotiable. You're carrying the future of my empire. That makes you the most valuable target in Tokyo." His voice softened. "And you're the woman I love. That makes you irreplaceable. I won't take chances." Elena felt the cage closing again. But this time she understood why. This time she could accept it. "Okay, but I still finish my degree. I'm not becoming a prisoner again." "You'll study from home, with guards outside your door." He pulled her into his arms, careful and tender. "How do you feel? Any nausea, dizziness, pain?" "Just tired and emotional. I cried at a commercial yesterday." "That's normal, apparently. I've been reading." At her surprised look, he almost smiled. "What? You think I didn't research pregnancy the moment we started trying? I've read 17 books, consulted with 3 specialists, and have a meal plan designed by a nutritionist ready to implement." Despite everything, Elena laughed. "You're ridiculous." "I'm thorough. There's a difference." He kissed her forehead. "The doctor will be here within the hour. Then we tell your family. Then we make announcements to my organization. Everyone needs to know that the Volkov legacy is secured." "What if it's a girl?" Victor paused. "Then she'll be the most protected, most educated, most capable woman in Tokyo. And when she's ready, she'll take over the empire. Boy or girl doesn't matter, Elena. What matters is that they're ours." The doctor confirmed it. 6 weeks pregnant, healthy, progressing normally. Victor's joy was almost painful to watch, this hard man, this killer, this emperor of shadows, holding an ultrasound image like it was the most precious thing in existence. "That's our baby," he kept saying. "That tiny spot, that's ours." Elena's family cried happy tears when they got the news. Her mother hugged her tight, whispering congratulations. Her father shook Victor's hand with pride. Her brothers teased her about becoming a mom so young. None of them knew the truth. None of them understood that this pregnancy was bought and paid for, negotiated and executed like a business transaction. But it didn't feel like a transaction anymore. Not when Victor touched her stomach with reverent hands. Not when he insisted on carrying her upstairs, she could easily climb herself. Not when he woke in the middle of the night just to make sure she was still breathing. The announcement to Victor's organization was different. Colder, more strategic. He gathered his lieutenants in the penthouse conference room, Elena seated beside him, a deliberate choice, making her visible, making her real. "My wife is pregnant," Victor said simply. "The child will be born in approximately 32 weeks. This is not up for discussion or debate. This is fact. Anyone who threatens my wife or my child will die. Anyone who even looks at them wrong will wish they had died. Are we clear?" The room full of dangerous men nodded. They understood. Viktor Volkov had just drawn a line in blood, and crossing it meant annihilation. But Elena saw the calculations in their eyes, too. Saw them measuring Victor's age against the baby's birth, wondering if he'd live long enough to see the child grow, wondering if opportunity might present itself during Elena's vulnerability. She memorized their faces, learned their names, started understanding that being Victor's wife meant more than just surviving. It meant learning to see threats before they materialized. The first 12 weeks crawled by in a haze of morning sickness and paranoia. Victor hired a full-time nurse, installed panic rooms, had Elena's food prepared by a chef he'd personally vetted and tested by a food taster before she ate a single bite. It was excessive and suffocating, and probably the only reason she survived what came next. At 13 weeks, during a routine ultrasound, the technician smiled. "Would you like to know the sex?" Victor's hand tightened on Elena's. "Yes." "Congratulations, you're having a girl." The silence was deafening. Elena felt Victor's entire body tense beside her. She knew what he was thinking. A daughter wasn't the son he'd wanted, wasn't the traditional heir his organization expected. She waited for disappointment, for anger. Instead, Victor's voice came out rough with emotion. "A daughter. We're having a daughter." Are you okay with that?" Elena asked carefully. He looked at her and his eyes were wet. "I'm terrified. Girls are harder to protect. The world is crueler to them. But yes, God, yes, our daughter." He looked back at the screen, at the tiny form floating in grayscale. "Katerina. We'll name her Katerina after my grandmother, the strongest woman I ever knew." Elena felt something break open in her chest. "Katerina Volkov." "Katerina Elena Volkov," Victor corrected. "She carries both of us." That night, Victor made love to her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. Afterward, lying tangled in silk sheets, he pressed his palm against her barely showing belly. "I'm 63 years old," he said quietly. "When Katerina is 10, I'll be 73. When she's 20, I'll be 83, if I even live that long." "Don't." "No, listen. I need you to understand. I might not be here to walk her down the aisle, might not meet her children, might not see her take over the empire I'm building for her." His voice cracked. "That terrifies me more than any bullet ever has." Elena turned to face him, taking his weathered face in her hands. "Then we make every moment count, every single one. And if the worst happens, I'll make sure she knows exactly who her father was. Not just the crime lord, not just the empire builder, but the man who read 17 pregnancy books and cried when he found out he was having a daughter." Victor pulled her close, and Elena felt dampness against her shoulder. Victor Volkov, who'd killed 6 men without flinching, was crying into her hair. At 18 weeks, Elena felt the first flutter of movement. Tiny, like butterflies trapped inside her. She was in the middle of a video lecture on international trade law when it happened. She gasped, hand flying to her stomach. Victor was in the room immediately, gun drawn, eyes scanning for threats. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She moved. The baby moved. He holstered the gun, crossed to her, dropped to his knees beside her chair. "Let me feel." "It's too early for you to feel it from outside, but she's there." She did it again. Elena grabbed his hand, pressed it against her stomach even though she knew he couldn't feel anything yet. "She's real, Victor. She's really in there." His hand splayed across her belly, possessive and protective. "Hello, Katerina," he murmured. "This is your father. I'm probably going to mess this up spectacularly, but I promise I'll try. I promise I'll protect you. I promise you'll never doubt that you're loved." Elena closed her eyes against sudden tears. This wasn't how she'd imagined becoming a mother. This wasn't the life she'd planned. But watching Victor talk to their unborn daughter, she couldn't imagine it any other way. The attack came at 22 weeks. Elena was coming back from a doctor's appointment, 2 guards flanking her, when the black van jumped the curb. The guards reacted instantly, pushing her behind a concrete planter as gunfire erupted. She felt something hot graze her arm, felt wetness that might have been blood. Then one of her guards was dragging her into a building while the other returned fire. The shooting stopped. Police sirens wailed in the distance. And Elena, pressed against a wall with her hands protecting her swollen belly, realized she was bleeding. Not from her arm, from between her legs. "Hospital," she gasped. "Now." The next 6 hours were a nightmare of stark white rooms and medical jargon and Victor's face carved from stone as doctors examined her. Placental abruption. Partial separation. Bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. Any stress, any exertion, Any excitement could trigger complete separation and kill their daughter. "I want names," Victor said, voice like death itself. "Victor." Names now. He wasn't talking to her, was talking to the phone pressed to his ear. "Everyone involved, everyone connected, everyone who knew our route today, I want them all." Elena grabbed his wrist with trembling hands. "Later, right now I need you here." He ended the call, sat beside her hospital bed, took her hand like he was afraid she'd disappear. "I should have been with you." "You can't be with me every second." "Watch me." His jaw was granite. "From now on, I work from home. Every meeting, every negotiation, every decision, all of it happens where you are. I'm not risking you again." "Victor, that's not practical." "I don't care. You're on bed rest for 4 months. That means I'm on bed rest for 4 months. We do this together." And he meant it. For the next 16 weeks, Viktor Volkov ran his empire from their bedroom. Lieutenants came to him. Meetings happened via secure video. Deals were made with Elena resting 6 feet away, swollen and uncomfortable, and somehow the center of his entire world. He was relentless in his care, adjusted her pillows, brought her meals, read to her from business journals and pregnancy books, talked to Katerina every night, hands on Elena's belly, telling their daughter stories about the empire she'd inherit and the mother who was fighting so hard to bring her safely into the world. "You're smothering me," Elena complained at week 35. "Good, get used to it." But he smiled, brushing hair from her forehead. "1 more week, then they'll induce labor, then you can move again. And then we'll have a daughter. And then we'll have everything." Labor started at 6 in the morning on a Tuesday. Elena's water broke, and Victor moved with military precision. Bags already packed, car already waiting, medical team already on standby at the private hospital. He held her hand through every contraction, let her scream at him when the pain became unbearable, never once left her side. 14 hours later, Katerina Elena Volkov entered the world screaming. She was perfect, tiny and red and furious at being born. Victor cut the umbilical cord with shaking hands, then stood frozen as the nurse placed their daughter in Elena's arms. "She's here," Elena whispered, staring at the impossibly small face. "She's really here." Victor sat on the edge of the bed, one finger touching Katerina's miniature hand. She gripped it instinctively, and something in his expression shattered. "She's perfect. You're both perfect." "Wanna hold her?" "I'm afraid I'll break her." "You won't break her. Come on, Papa, meet your daughter properly." Victor took Katerina with the careful reverence of a man handling unstable explosives, cradled her against his chest, looked down at her scrunched face and unopened eyes, and cried without shame or hesitation. "Hello, little one," he murmured in Russian. "I'm your father. I'm old and dangerous and probably the worst choice for this job, but I'm going to love you anyway, going to protect you, going to make sure you have everything you need to be strong and smart and fierce, like your mother." Elena watched through her own tears. This was her family. This violent man and this tiny girl and the empire of shadows they'd all been born into. It wasn't the life she'd imagined, but it was hers. 6 months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and diaper changes and Katerina's first smile. Elena finished her degree online, submitted her final thesis while nursing. Victor gradually returned to his office but came home every day at 5 without fail. Dinner together, bath time together, bedtime stories in Russian and English and Japanese, teaching Katerina 3 languages before she could even understand one. "I want another baby," Victor said one evening as they watched Katerina sleep in her crib. Elena turned to stare at him. "She's only 6 months old." "I know, but I'm 64 now. Every year that passes is a year I might not have. I want to give Katerina a sibling. He paused. "I want to maximize whatever time I have left to be a father." Elena understood, saw the gray creeping further into his hair, noticed how he moved slower in the mornings, how his shoulder, the one that had been shot, ached when it rained. Viktor Volkov was aging, and they both knew it. "1 more," she said finally. "We try for 1 more, but not until Katerina is a year old. My body needs time to recover." "Agreed." He pulled her close. "Thank you for everything you've given me, for her, for staying, for loving me despite how this started." "Despite? You mean because of how this started? You forced me into your world, Victor, but then you gave me a place in it. That's the difference." When Katerina turned 1, they started trying. It took longer this time, 8 months of hopping and disappointment before the test finally showed positive. Elena was 23, Victor was 65, and they were having a son. Alexei Viktor Volkov was born on a rainy October morning, screaming even louder than his sister had. He had Victor's eyes, that same piercing intensity, and Elena's stubborn chin. Victor held him and wept just as hard as he had with Katerina. "My son," he whispered, "my legacy." "Our son," Elena corrected, "our family." "2 is enough," Victor asked that night, both children sleeping in the nursery under the watchful eye of a night nurse. "2 is perfect. I'm 23 with 2 children and a business degree. That's plenty." Victor smiled, tired but content. "Perfect it is." The years blurred together in the beautiful chaos of raising children in a world of shadows and light. Katerina grew fierce and intelligent, already showing signs of her father's strategic mind at age 3. Alexei was quieter, more observant, but just as sharp. They spoke 3 languages by the time they started private school. They knew their father was important and powerful, but they didn't yet understand the blood that had built their empire. Victor changed. Gradually, deliberately, he began withdrawing from the criminal side of his operations. The legitimate businesses were more than profitable enough. He was 68 now, and every morning was harder than the last. He'd survived 3 assassination attempts in the past 5 years, and each one took longer to recover from. "I'm done," he told Elena on the morning of her 27th birthday. "I'm officially retiring from anything illegal. The empire transitions to purely legitimate operations, real estate, tech investments, shipping, all of it clean." "Why now?" "Because Katerina asked me yesterday what I do for work, and I didn't want to lie to her. Because Alexei starts school next year, and I want to be at his events without worrying someone will try to kill me in the parking lot. Because I'm 68 years old and tired, and I want to spend whatever time I have left just being your husband and their father." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "You're going soft in your old age." "Your fault entirely." He kissed her forehead. "You and those 2 little terrorists you gave me. Best decision I ever made was walking into that izakaya and ordering the wrong steak." That evening, they celebrated Elena's birthday with family. Her parents, her brothers, now in university, Victor's closest associates who'd become genuine friends over the years. Katerina and Alexei ran circles around the adults, hopped up on birthday cake and excitement. Elena stood on the balcony overlooking Tokyo, the same balcony where armed men had once crashed through. Victor joined her, moving slower but still steady, still strong enough. "Regrets?" he asked. Elena thought about the terrified 21-year-old in a wedding dress. Thought about the forced marriage and the coerced pregnancy and the gilded cage that had been her prison. Thought about the moment she'd first said, "I love you," with a gun in her hand and blood on the floor. "Not one," she said honestly. "This wasn't the life I planned, but it's the life I want. Even though I'm an old man, who'll probably be gone before our children graduate university. Especially because of that, you taught me that time isn't about quantity. It's about intensity, about making every moment matter. We've lived more in 6 years than most people live in 60. Victor pulled her close, and she felt his heart beating against her back, slower than it used to be, but still beating, still fighting. "I love you, Elena Martinez Volkov. You saved me. Not that night when you pulled the trigger, but every day since. You took a man who thought he was already dead and gave him a reason to live. I love you too, you impossible old man. Now come inside. Your daughter wants you to dance with her, and you know she won't take no for an answer. She gets that from her mother." They went inside together. Victor swept Katerina into his arms, twirling her around while she shrieked with laughter. Alexei tugged on Elena's hand, wanting his turn. The penthouse filled with music and joy and the sound of family, loud, chaotic, perfect. This was the empire Victor had really built. Not the criminal organization or the legitimate businesses or the billions in assets. This, love found in darkness, hope born from coercion, a family forged in fire and blood and desperate bargaining that had somehow transformed into something real. Elena watched her husband dance with their daughter, watched her son waiting impatiently for his turn, and knew with absolute certainty that she'd make the same choice again. Would walk into that penthouse in a wedding dress, would agree to one night, would choose to stay. Because some cages aren't prisons, some bargains aren't traps, and sometimes the most dangerous man in Tokyo just needs the right woman to show him what he's really been fighting for all along. Victor caught her eye across the room and smiled, that rare, genuine smile he only showed his family. Mouthed, "Thank you," over Katerina's head. Elena smiled back, mouthed always. 6 years ago, she'd been given an impossible choice. Today, she was living proof that sometimes the impossible choices lead to the most extraordinary lives. Her empire wasn't built on fear or violence or power. It was built on love hard-won and fiercely protected. On children who'd grow up knowing they were wanted. On a marriage that had started as a transaction and become a partnership that would outlive them both. The city glittered beyond the windows. Tokyo, endless and indifferent, the same view she'd had on her wedding night. But everything had changed. She had changed. And somewhere in that change, in that transformation from captive to partner to mother to wife, Elena had found something she never expected. Freedom. Not freedom from Victor. Freedom with him. Freedom to choose this life, this love, this family every single day. And that made all the difference. If you made it this far, thank you for watching this story. Victor and Elena's journey shows us that even the darkest beginnings can lead to unexpected light, though I definitely don't recommend starting relationships this way in real life. What did you think about their complicated love story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more intense, emotional stories that'll keep you hooked from start to finish, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Give this video a like if their story moved you, and share it with someone who loves complex, dramatic romances. What other stories would you like to hear? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.